I am so pleased that Noemi Saafyr is here. I've known her for quite a bit, and thank you so much. Basically, she'll be creating, she creates community wellness spaces, an artist expressing her healings through event hosting, spoken word poetry, rap, singing, dance, visual arts, sign language, and theater. She's the director of Survivor Theater Project and founder of SOS Sharing Our Stories. As an activist, this includes ending sexual violence, healing with the body, and listening in community sharing for a revolution. She is beyond surviving. She is thriving.
Hi, everybody. So I'm happy to see familiar faces, good friends. I've worked with you with Alternative for Communities and Environment, ACE.
Yeah.
And just really honored that Pompey invited me here. I've known her for 11 years now. Met her when I was just coming into Boston, didn't know where I was going, what I was doing, but it was on a needs base on how I came here. But now I live in Providence now, but I'm here every week doing something.
Can you say your name and pronounce it in the pronouns?
Oh, yes. Excuse me. So my name is Noemi Saafyr Bus, and my pronouns are she, her. So I was invited yesterday, and I really work good under pressure, and like just going with the flow. So I was thinking about like how to make this engaging without also like doing what I love to do, which is hold space and like facilitate and create and perform. Like, how do I do this at like what I practice in with you, so you have a snapshot of what I practice on a daily, weekly, and organizationally community. So first step for me, I want to offer and welcome y'all is like taking a deep breath and arrive into your bodies. Breathe in. How you want to do that by your guidance. Just for a second. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. This is one of my favorite songs.
You know, I was just going to say, we're having music to the background.
Yeah, right? That was perfect. So I will just open up and just start with like the history of what made me do what I'm doing now, which is SOS, sharing our stories. So I'm identified as a survivor, and that what that means is specifically of sexual trauma and violence, but you know, I'm also surviving so many other things. But that is like the core of my journey and my life work on how to heal the body within myself and with others, and still feel like I'm enough because of how much that can take away from others in their bodies and make them not feel like they're enough. So my parents are deaf. I'm born and identify as a child of deaf adults in the deaf community. So what that means as a coda is that my parents are deaf, but I'm born hearing, or also I can be deaf and be a coda. But my trauma is within my parents, specifically, my father. And so since this past 11 years, a lot of me opening up and waking up to the depth of my trauma and like taking action to heal has been through photography. It has been through community organizing. It has been through just strategizing on how to get grants and access to community resources to meet a need for others, especially at the time as a youth, for youth. Like, what do these youth need to feel like they don't have to just stay in school and do the academia school and then go home and feel restricted at home? Like, where is there room for us as youth to like identify ourselves? So that journey started with me. At first, was writing. Like, I'm a passionate writer. I love to write a lot of poetry, stories, and I'm known for poetry at best. And then that also branched into performance art as a whole, which is theater, and then dance, and then, you know, that I found like a lot of empowerment and healing. And then when I came across a point of meeting Survivor Theater Project, which is a group of us who are collectives now, but it's an organization of using theater and arts to end violence as a goal, as in our lifetime, in our individual lifetime. And even if we don't, that's okay, but we're ending patterns, right? We're like breaking the oppression of trauma as a goal and using art as a tool. And when I came in, I was just a performing artist. I came in as like the poet, not knowing what I was doing, but I was also doing a lot of community organizing in Dorchester, Roxbury. And then later I was being part of not just the performance troupe, but I became a facilitator. And we have our monthly series called Healing Through Creative Arts. And that series is a program where we come once a month for the past 6 years. It was at the Cambridge Women's Center, where once a month we host workshops by a survivor. And they could be as little as like breathing workshops for the entire 2 hours, or as deep as making songs and making jewelry or belly dancing, like all these things that tap into the awakening the thriver in us and not just surviving. I believe that oppression capitalizes off of trauma and like manipulation. And so what my discovery along the way was that there's fear even with my own family on how to break through that attachment to material or the system. My parents are from Puerto Rico, Jamaica. They're deaf. You know, they got family. They're trying to live the American dream, and yet they're still suffering the trauma of survivorhood. And I really had to take a deep dive and realize my parents are survivors of their own trauma from Jamaica. Oh yeah, lots of sexual trauma and abuse. As a woman, for my mother, yeah, like that's on a daily. And so then I realized, wow, I've been banging at the wall for their attention to see why this is important for me. And silence is not just by voice. It can be by body, and it could be by how we communicate with each other. And even my parents, who speak sign language as their primary language, cannot find the right, expression to get what they need. And then we as hearing people, because this is how the deaf community identifies the hearing world, hearing people, I see we also struggle on how to use our voice. And that's what we need. And we're always needed to use our voice and sit proper. And like trauma sits in so many different parts of our body, in our hips, in our shoulders, it's deep, it runs so deep, and it's personal to each and one of you. And so for me, I do look at this as to step out of the system, step out of the corporates, out of these like tight spaces where we're not able to communicate, and like tap into my body and how to reclaim my body, reclaim my soul. So this workshop started for the past 5 years as like workshops, one-offs, and then I was like, wait, I'm in Cambridge, I'm in Newton, I'm in like these really affordable spaces where people are, wanting this work, but like, are they really seeing like the trauma that is happening here? Am I doing a service to my people, my lineage? Like this runs like deep, and I learned that SOS is like immediate. It's a need, right? It's like save our souls. But how do we respond? Like, how do we respond to the SOS? Like sometimes trauma can hit us and we're fight or flight, we're frozen, like it can be really tight. And so sharing our stories is kind of like the life jacket, because your story is your story, it's your journey, it's your economy. You can say what you can say and people will be like, you're doing too much, and that can really hurt you and your body, and it affects your brain and like how you move and express yourself. Pompey is one of the best people in my life that I've experienced that journey with dance and art, and this amazing training we did, like a 2-day beautiful artistic project called Moving Towards Liberation, and using art to kind of, and not voice for some of it, to express like how trauma affects us. And these arts were wearable pieces, and they actually were designed to be like the animals that have protective parts of their anatomy, like spikes or, like a shielding. Like these different animals have these tools to protect themselves. So what is your tool? That's my question for you guys. Like, what is your tool to feel like, okay, I'm feeling safe? The word in sign language I want to offer to you guys is safe. So we take your hands like this, and it's so it's a means of like, this is my boundaries. This is how I feel safe. So I've learned that sign language has so much of like what we're saying every day, and we don't know we have access to say. And then also some sign language, which is American Sign Language, is just a whole history of oppression there, that don't capture what we're trying to communicate. And so I'm like, wow, people's body language is not structured in just American Sign Language. I do work with body language, not just sign language, but body language, and how, like, empowering people to move in their body and to feel safe or brave. So you take your hands firmly on your chest and have the courage, bravery to feel strong, And these are just a few of these words that I just drop in, because I'm not using this to teach sign language, or people are like, oh, I'm gonna learn sign language. I'm like, sure. How does your body feel though? Because deaf people will read that. But deaf people will be like, oh, you want to learn sign language? And it's like, they're looking at your expressions in your face. If you're like happy, or, that's like 60% of sign language. Deaf people are very, very expressive, and they like will take up so much space. They're very loud, so there's no limit to how we're supposed to express, as we actually do have in hearing language. So I'm doing a lot of deep diving around that, just so that you guys can like feel affirmed that those are things that you could take with you to fill in, and then like how that could show up in spaces where you're joining workshops, you're joining, like maybe your job is like working in an office and you're doing these trainings and they're like so messed up, and you're like, I can't go left, I can't go right. Our parts of our work is to come in to help train these employers, these companies. It's not about training the staff, it's about training these employers. So I'm gonna get to the point where what we're here for. I'm clearly so passionate about this. And I don't do this for entirely for like my own profit, but it is my sustainable life work because I know that it can be accessible for everyone. And I am an interpreter, so part of that is like if I'm gonna gain money, it's making sure I have the means to be trained and supervised, not trained, supervised, but get trained. Use these trainings to apply to these workshops, which I bring in art supplies, I bring in paper, materials, Play-Doh. I have to rent the space sometimes if I want to get people outside of these offices and into other spaces to give more freedom. So SOS has been part of STP's programming around like making this accessible as like a liberation, where we're compensating people. The goal is that everybody should be properly compensated for their healing. And if we're like doing like work and asking government money, like that's the radical part is like, this is money to fund people for their healing. And that's a need, that's an SOS need. And if you want to know the story, maybe emotionally, when you're ready, we can exchange those stories. So for the past 5 years, I've done workshops at Jeremiah's house, the Curly Project with spontaneous celebrations. I've done festivals, conferences, and so gratefully they've been able to meet along of my lines of the needs of transportation or just my the time to like come and hold these workshops. These workshops are also designed by the need of the organization. So it's not like my brain and I'm like, this is what I need you to do. It's what you need me to do. So I can hold space for you guys to tell your stories. And here are some art tools to access that when our voice can't really speak it out. But we need to like have like paper to write and take home with us. Sometimes I do a workshop where we're doing love letters to ourselves, and that's envelopes, stamps, paper, so I can like send that back to you. The follow-up is very important. Healing doesn't come in and we just expect you to get it and you just go in the world. Like I personally need to see you guys follow up and have that. And so that's a big part of like what made me so happily move into Dorchester, Roxbury, JP, accessing Black and Brown communities who don't even believe they deserve this healing, because intergenerational trauma on a like racism level is one thing, and then we have all these other things. And so that's made a huge impact. And then the other part is what I love to do on a personal level is sharing our stories is also what I'm shifting this year. And actually this is like really exciting why Bumpy called me, and right at the perfect time, just 2 days ago, I said, I only want to do, if I'm going to do sharing our stories, I've done 5 years of workshops. That's like over 100 workshops. Like I've done so many. I want to focus on a one-to-one base and like just capture this like artistic experience. So if you do dance, I want to like compensate or like pay for our art tools, our space or whatever, and explore it and hear your story and send that out if you want to speak what you want to speak in the world and what healing means for you and your body. And so I'm shifting on my own capacity to make sure that I can show up fully for those individuals, because holding space for like 5-6 people is a lot, but I can do that too. Like I'm an entertainer sometimes, so that's no problem. But at the same time, your stories are like nourishing to me. I like get high off of hearing people's stories and what they've been through, what makes them happy, not just trauma, but like what makes you so happy and you don't think that you can talk about it, but like, yes, I want to know. So I talked a lot, and I don't know if any of that makes sense. I was trying to remember answering some of those questions, but I want to put that back out to you guys. Any questions, concerns, things you want like more direct answers for, so I can really properly, because I have like a whole resume that I could share, but I'm just talking about the passion of it. So, yeah, just take a break for a second. See what's on your mind.
Well, my interest in art is more to get other people's stories out, to get people to, like, say, what I've been through sometimes. I go out myself and I feel I cannot be so condemning. You know, I did go through violence and attempted sexual abuse, but then I get older and then I see my parents had the problems. My mother was an immigrant, spoke English, and you talk about body language. It's hard for an immigrant to, my mother was British Canadian, and they're different, to understand the body language.
Yeah.
I mean, and they said, why can't immigrants get in? But I mean, I like to get those stories out because I feel like people are too condemning. They don't see what somebody else went through.
Yeah.
Like I had a little bit of an edge in my small town on the wrong side of the tracks. Before my parents separated, you know, we traveled. So I lived in Georgia for a couple of months. And the class was divided in the first grade to 8 sections. And they said, if I stayed there longer, I would have been put in a higher section.
Right.
And I was very popular there, and the kids were saying how smart I was, but I had trouble speaking English somewhat, so they helped me speak, you know, they bragged how smart I was, but they were helping me pronounce words. And I was very popular. Then, so that got me from, I began to feel when I was 8, oh, I feel I'm so inferior in everything because of the way. But then I thought back to that. Then I discovered I was the oldest in my neighborhood, my stick of the woods, and then the others were treated the same way. Then I say, hey, it's not just me.
Right.
And why should I think they're inferior just because somebody else thinks they're inferior? Then I thought back to that teacher, and that thing on the first grade kept me going.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I have something I wanted to share in response to that. So I was gonna name, in terms of like history and cross-cultural history, so SOS on my website, I've been able to break down the 3 life jackets that have been SOS, which is the workshops, being able to come and bring this work for communities, and interpreting, as I mentioned, like being able to be the container for people to speak when, you know, for a deaf person, for a hearing person in a space as a need. And then events. So every year I've hosted an annual Juneteenth event celebration, which is to honor, like, not, well, predominantly it's centered in Black history and like the freedom that comes of Juneteenth, but it's also to bring in the awareness that we all have the right to freedom. And that's a fight that's still happening today. But cross-culturally, we in America, we all like can battle with what freedom really means and looks like, and how, like, it's not about superiority or inferiority, but it's about, like, ultimately, like, everybody has the right. And so part of that, the events, that is something I've been very passionate about doing every year, where I just call in people to come to this event. And it's something creative. It could be a speed dating event, but we're consciously talking about love and, you know, boundaries, and not looking to date each other. But like, some of our ancestors couldn't even have love because of abuse and, you know, things like that. So there's that, and there's been speed dating event I've done, and I've done workshops at schools, like where teachers try to like control their students and hold space that students actually should have the space to feel centered and not controlled, and not feel like below the teacher. It's about equalizing. So I just want to name those few things. Here for you.
I just want to say that first, like, thank you for speaking. And the first thing that like resonated, that you said that resonated the most with me, was about like creating spaciousness for ourselves.
Yeah.
And just to react to what you said first, I think that the way that I usually react is like silence. Like that was something, a tool that I learned very early on, and it's something that I think is really interesting because if I'm quiet, it's a moment of power as well. Like some people can see it as like you shutting down, but it's also a moment of power because it's like you're choosing whether or not you give someone your energy, you give someone a response, but I also recognize that as being like very patriarchal and violent at the same time because that's what was, like growing up, like, like parents would answer you, it's just like,
Yep.
It's no, automatically, right? And so then you do that to other people and you don't even, anyway, so
Yeah.
I just thought that was like the first thing I thought of when you were talking, but I love that, everything you said. One of the things that I was doing like for myself to learn how to heal is like talking everything out. Like,
Yeah.
that wasn't comfortable in this one. Like,
Yeah.
and following it up and all that thing. So I thank you for inviting me to think about that in my own life. And then my second question, or my question is, okay, how do we, or do you think that we can have spaces for healing models that are historically and like just contemporaneously harmful, like institutions, nonprofit structures? Like, how do we do that? And like, how can we like really create a space? And like, you're doing something that's completely radical and different. Like, do we have to do something that's completely radical and different, or like, can we use the current models? Like, what do we do?
Right. I think that's a great question because some people just won't let up, But it's a need. Like people
I really
it.
want to see bridges being built between the two.
Yeah.
Like,
So
that's what interests me so much in the new economy movement and building cooperativism is the idea of people working together and seeing each other as equals in every sense and being able to break down oppression. And I'm looking to get institutional buy-in to that.
Yeah.
With this new movement that's happening around the policy piece,
Right.
legislation.
Right. So that is perfect.
So give money to her.
And to everybody else. But yeah. So Survivor Theater Project helped me to see the possibility. We've performed at correctional facilities. Like let me tell you, the founder, Melissa Redwin, has the compassion skills of an alien. Like I don't know how she does it, but the way she's able to land into the heart of these people who run these spaces has now been a possibility to say, yeah, we've been in this space. We can have this. And so I've been able to show up to a professional development training and look like the space, right? The people in the space. But I got to tap into your mind and heart. They got to work together. The furthest distance is from the mind to the heart. That's what my good friend tells me. And so if we're really looking at like how we can be so heady, like this is the systems where trauma is like, it's a lot of head, it's like logic, like I gotta do this logically and blah, blah, blah. Let's get some art in here if it's gonna get them to shut up, like whatever it is, it's not, it's about really your heart beats. And so what also is important is really working with compassion. Like I misstep on that all the time. I'm a director of the organization, but some of my teammates are not comfortable with me because sometimes I'm like, I get into this like this role where I've been a director of other organizations that wasn't as radical, still radical, but not as radical as this really is. And I'm still trying to break down what I've been learning and taught and trained. So it's about really compassion and then and also logic and name the need. Sometimes I'll have conversations or I'll go to an interview and I think they want to get to know me. They just want to know if I can meet their needs. And that's the strategy. But if I really want them to really bond, if I want to bond with them, I got to just be like, thank you for even inviting me. It's not manipulation, it's compassion, because I also have to walk away accepting that it may not work. That's the part where I have to give myself self-compassion is very important. You know what I mean? It may not end in this lifetime. That's why we also know that. sexual violence and healing work may not end in this lifetime.
I had a question about what you were talking about, the model about compensating people for healing.
Right.
Can you go more into how that came about, who the people are, and how you are activating that model?
Yes, this is great. We're so excited to be taking this year. So historically, STP and myself as an individual, but STP has been a theater troupe where we've had a director, company manager, participants we hire. We've been doing like the normal. Now we're reshifting and we're like, wait a minute, we get burnt out. Not just we are getting burnt out helping survivors heal. And that's not working. So part of our work was making sure the participants came and had compensated rehearsals, performances, food, as needed transportation. Like we're doing all the grant writing, we're doing all this stuff, but are we really? And then sometimes those participants may see this and like not step in, so we're losing money because we're like putting all this investment and it's not coming back. So this year and going forward, we're really taking a deeper lens on like what's nourishment, what feels nourishing for us to do this work. Well, first of all, honor our boundaries. Like I'm not working with like over my time and my schedule. So that's one. Like even our own organization, I realize we have to take a step back. And even myself as SOS sharing our stories, if I don't do sharing our story stuff, I don't do it because I'm not gonna overwork myself. It's art, it's healing. Then I'll contradict already my own mission. Mm. So there's that. So what's nourishment? That means taking a deep dive on like how much we are critically thinking, which is part of work life, is critical thinking, and applying that for nourishment and healing. And then we are, and I'm so excited to take this lead in creating Thriver's Blueprint, which is taking a step back from our theater troupe and creating these troupes and tours and rehearsals, and like the first step is creating a healing workbook, which is like, it's a cool name, but it's more so not work, but it's healing work, right? And it's instead of a curriculum book where participants get and it's like, all right, this is what the 8 weeks look like, and I'm gonna read through this and then like deep dive in my healing and then perform. No, but the point of this workbook, it's like, it's also a journal. It's also resources to your nearest masseuse and acupuncturist. Let's support our local healers that are like trying to take care of people as their own life work, right? And then also, we talked a little bit about it today, about it being part anthology, where it's other artists who are creating zines and just their stories and using their art and stories and put in this book that also can be an individual's gift to yourself and always something to have for you going forward. And even if you don't do a true performance on stage, you have this like piece of material for you, and that in itself compensates, it just comes back to you, and in that way. And then right now with our organizational structure, we are not partnering with many organizations right now. We put a hold, and I'm so happy that I've gotten everybody's approval, which is not difficult, but I'm like, we're compensating artists to show up to these trainings. We have a board that works for free. Like, boards work their butt off for organizations for free once a month, and like probably on their own time personally. So using this budget this year is to focus on any LT leadership team members, which is also known as the board. They come, I want to make sure they're compensated for the 3 hours that we're working together to strategize their transportation and food. so that when we move forward in the world, we're continuing to say this is thriving. It's not just like survivorship, it's thriving and saying this is like, we pay for everything if we pay attention. So how do we compensate that is what we're strategizing this year, but also what works for us and what's accessible, which is hopefully this healing workbook as a start, and then using that to launch into programming for folks. Yeah. Oh, mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, when we're talking about the healing process specifically, like when does surviving turn into thriving, and what does somebody need in those?
Love this. So that's a deep question even for me to think about. So going back to how I first walked into Survivor Theater Project, I was working at an after-school program that was a needs-based program. So it wasn't like a boys and girls club where we want, they expect you to be a member and you go in for homework and you go play. It was actually like for students who were struggling with homelessness or just attention in classrooms, could be getting all A's but getting detentions all the time. Like, what's the need for the student to feel like they're thriving in their school experience? And then the goal was not to keep them in the program, was to make sure they phased out. And it could be as little as 2 weeks or as long as, the family or whoever is able to afford to keep them in the program. So the idea I've been kind of meditating on this week is like, how does Thrivers Blueprint look like that, right? The founder is phasing out because she doesn't even want to have that founder's syndrome and feeling like this has to be like how I found it. The founder's like, no guys, I don't want to be at the strategy meetings. I don't like, just tell me what I need to do to help like maintain the like systems of the budget. I'll tell you how much money you got, but like I have to let go, right? There's a point where we're supporting each other on that part of like thriving to let go and welcome in what can be new. If you as an individual feel like, nah, I'm not ready and I need to keep healing this, yes. But also thriving is about welcoming the push to be towards being more ready. And so what does that look like? You know what I mean? How does that mean changing the way we look at or how we use our models? Like change is like the core of it, and thriving is about welcoming change because it's always a constant. So like I said, we were a troupe where we had rehearsals and tours. Now we've changed the model and we are working internally so that we can partner with organizations and run separate programs. You know what I mean? So that's the thriving like goal, is that it's not to kind of uproot trauma. It's about establishing healing and thriving on what that looks like for you. So if you are a dancer and you come in not knowing how to dance, the goal is that you don't stay at that same dance studio. You get to learn dance at its levels. So even for me, I don't want to be in a director role long. I actually hope that I can phase out, honestly, this year and thrive into Thrivers Blueprint by working on this part, and then let go and by inviting new people in to take it over. And then I can go thrive as an interpreter and do SOS on a one-to-one level. Like that's my personal goal in the next few years. But that's something you have to know and ask for what you need, what you think you need, and so we can say yes. The goal on nourishment is like saying yes to meeting your need, and that's thriving. If that helps.
Yeah, I'm saying.
I want to get
Please,
you.
let's get Abby.
Yeah,
Abby's
I
not
actually have a
done.
question that I think is pretty relevant to a lot of people here. I'm involved in a lot of community organizing work that's very like up here, very intellectual, very in the head. Especially I'm thinking about a meeting I was at on Monday and how the facilitation was so intellectual. And I'm wondering how you get people who are in that space, who are very intellectually committed to ending oppression, or doing like really good things, like back in their bodies and their hearts and their hands. And I was wondering how you do that.
That is a great question. And that's like the core of everything we're doing. Even right now, like you're pushing me to, let's just shake it off.
Yeah.
Let's answer that by just taking a deep breath, move your shoulders back, remember where you are, you're here and now in your bodies. That's one. Two, an example I have is last year, we were asked to go to this mind control retreat, but it wasn't to control our mind. It was so ironic because it was about calling out mind control as a use, right? So these are people who are here waking up to these stories and testimonies of filmmakers, of people who were like, this one guy, he's like, I use film and has worked with celebrities with his film to break mind control. And even still at this conference, they were so heady and it was still mind controlling. When I tell you, this man went from literally day to night with us when we got there, me and one other person, who she's a drummer. So she gets us drumming. She wakes the body up through drumming, like the heartbeat, right? The heartbeat. And then I do the chanting and the movement and the singing and and then both of us do that together. That night, our goal, our job, right, was to come and be the creative space of the whole conference. But we left saying creativity is all day. Like, if you want people's attention, let's be real, psychologically, we check out in 20 to 30 minutes. We need like breaks. We need to go and walk, we need to move, we need to come back. We need to let people like, if I'm in a meeting like this, I want to be able to stand up and stretch while you're talking because that's what I need, and then come back and not feel like I'm insulting you because you're presenting. It's like, just talk, So that conference, it was hard because he was disappointed when I said, I met my capacity. I can only be here. I thought I was gonna be here for 2 days. This is really deep. You got me really thinking, and my body needs to take a step back. And he was like, well, maybe I should pay you less. I'm like, no, that's not what we're doing, because you hired us. We're partnering with you to create healing, right? This is a healing conference. We're healing, creative healing. And also, Guy, last night you was jamming in your guitar, singing in Spanish, dancing. You know what I'm talking about. Let's know that this isn't an end here. It's just a continuation. So in these spaces, like when it is heady, like it's about pushing. Like, can we push to use something creative, which is like write or breathe? Like, what can we do? Which holistic practices are starting to like really show up more and more in trainings and things, and it could be marketing or whatever, but it's a need, and it's helpful, and it's working. So for you, like when you think about what you need in these meetings, what does that look like? You know what I mean? Like, what would that look like for you? Go to your supervisor, name that, you know what I mean? If you feel comfortable, or just process that with the people you feel safe with. I know as scary as it is, you don't have to put yourself through it if people won't leave their head and move into their body to do this great work. And then affirmations are so helpful. You are strong. You are worthy of being heard, seen. Using just simple affirmations in these heady spaces will make a big difference. Sometimes I'm like, thank you for you, and someone go busting out crying. I'm like, what? But I know that I've been there because for the whole week, I'm sitting here thinking I'm a failure, and this person's thanking me for being me. Like, wow. Even yesterday, I was sitting there and I was just like, I couldn't even go to sleep last night. I was like, I can't wait for tomorrow. Like, what? I've been in my head for I've been in my apartment for 5 days, like doing my self-care, and then here's this blessing, and I can continue to recharge. So affirmations are really important to get to you.
Okay,
Yeah,
you
let's
brought up
wrap
to
it
me
up.
something I hadn't thought about, what I use for healing,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought, oh, country, western, and folk music, and some popular
We've done a
music.
festival.
Because that's what I use for healing, because the songs you can relate to, so you're not alone in the world.
Yeah.
And they sometimes express it. I didn't think about that, but that's what I use for healing.
Yeah, Louise.
Listening Works was a training that I did, and it was an amazing training for political work, for legislative work. So this was a training, and I'll use 2 seconds, which was literally the good out of the 2 days. It was a full day's worth of just sitting next to someone and listening with each other. That and like really deep diving, listening and being present, and taking turns for those people to listen. Like, okay, I'm gonna listen for you, you listen for me. If you can do that on a one level, you can do that with anybody. Like you can, and with yourself.
I feel like my question is too long, so you might ask the question after.
But you know, Noemi's here, so maybe like after we disperse into member meetings, she will entertain that question.
Or maybe you can
Thank
answer
you.
it and get a short answer, then get a longer one.
All right, Louise, we gotta break this.
Yeah.
So tell me, Noemi, if you have any more parting gifts, and we will wrap it up.
Oh, well, I don't know about gifts.
Love yourself.
Yes,
Yeah.
love yourselves. And like, as I told my friend, like, just listen to what attracts to you, follow what makes you feel happy and joyful. Look at the evil in the eye and tell them like, you have no space here. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
find courage, wherever that looks like for you. And as for SOS specifically for me, like, I would just love for you to continue sharing stories and like, you know, support the arts as you may need with. I welcome it with
Support
myself.
Noemi
but-
Saafyr.
You know, I just love like you can listen to my album, like you know what I mean, check out my website, stuff is I just do this as a personal level. And then STP Survivor Theater Project. Feel free to send your emails over. We'll send you newsletters so you can know where these workshops are being held, what updates are going on, where we're at, so that you can just know and pass along to your neighbor.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here.
Oh, sorry, one parting gift.
Oh,
I love you.
Oh.
So this is an acronym in sign language, which is so funny. So this is the symbol. It's a very much of a like a peace sign.
Mm.
So the letters I, L, and Y create I love you. So if you do this to that person, you're in gold. Like with them,
Like, can I take a
it's
picture
love
of
and
it?
support. Yes, love and support
Do
is
a
a
video.
symbol
Yeah.
of sign language. And then if you really want to love someone, you can do I really love you. So this is the letter R. Because I really love you.
Oh, wow.
So I love you. I really love you.
So cute.
Yes. So that's my party.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Silent applause.
Yeah. Oh, silent